Hi, folks. Welcome to the Moving On podcast. I'm Jay Norman, and this is my wife.
Hi, I'm Jessie Norman. Just like many of you, Jay and I have both walked through some difficult seasons in our lives.
And we know just how easy it is to get stuck.
We now have 5 beautiful
and crazy
children, and because of everything we've been through, our home operates on grace.
A concept we didn't fully understand until way later on in life.
Until we actually needed it ourselves. We want to share through stories of love and laughter,
How we were moving on and how big of a game changer grace can be.
in relationship with one another, and how we treat ourselves, and in our case, blending a family.
Something that may just require the largest amount of grace to date.
Preach.
You never know what road life's going to take you on. We have a podcast.
Yes, we do, and we really hope y'all enjoy it.
Hi, babe.
Hi.
How are you today?
You didn't give me much time to get back to my
We
mic.
didn't. You got to work faster. Got to go faster.
And I even gave you the look like, give me Tom.
Well, I thought you were going to move a little quicker than that. So we're recording again today, and we just celebrated our 3rd anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary
I
to
didn't
you.
get you anything yet.
That's all right. I didn't want anything.
You're the best gift giver. I woke up and there was all of these gifts on my floor and the most beautiful card, and I thought we were going shopping for each other, so I didn't grab you anything.
Well, what's funny is that I kind of played dumb like I didn't remember, and I got ready to leave, and you were like, happy anniversary, babe.
Oh.
I said, happy anniversary, babe, and just like nothing, and then she got up an hour later and finds a gift in the floor.
Yeah, it was so nice.
So on top of all that, we have a weekend planned with friends, asked us to meet them and stay at a hotel and go out to eat kind of for anniversary, Valentine's and all that. So we had all that planned for Saturday.
Right, Saturday and Sunday.
And thought we were through with basketball. Didn't know. They said we had ended the season tournament. Said we didn't. Well, come to find out we did. So I tell Jess, said, look, got the schedule, got the tournament. We play on Saturday.
And I didn't say anything.
She goes dead silent on me.
No, I just thought, go with God, make good choices in my head. And I just
Did you get that done?
No, and I meant for you.
Oh, okay.
Jay.
Yes.
And I don't ever call you Jay.
Yeah, that's
you
weird.
know it's serious. Yeah. I passed you. You said, we have a turn. He looked so glum, and he held his phone up to me, and it was a tournament. And I just looked at him like, well, here's to hoping you make a good decision.
And so she was like, well, what are you going to do? Just let somebody else coach it? And I'm like, no, I'm going to coach it. I've coached them all season. I'm not going to.
I have to tell a backstory, which they already know, but I want to reiterate. We have been 2 ships passing in the night for an entire 2 seasons.
Right.
So I'm kind of done. And we finally do have this little getaway. And even though we're only going 1 town over, to me, that should take precedence.
But I decided that I wanted to coach that team. It did not take precedence. I'd coached them the whole season, and I wanted to finish it. I just couldn't see leaving them. So she got a little bit upset with me.
No, I threw a wall-eyed fit.
She did.
And threw an adult tantrum. And
so I left with the tantrum going on because I had a meeting, and I went to the lunch meeting with a friend of mine. And I get about an hour in, and I get this phone call, and I answer the phone, and I'm thinking she's going to be mad and still be chewing on me or something. She's like, this is going to be the best phone call of your life.
Yeah.
I said, how's that? And she said, well, we got a tournament too. And not only did our daughter play on our anniversary night, the actual anniversary we were going out to eat and had planned, but she actually played at 7 o'clock at night.
That night.
And then, in turn, had a game within an hour of the game that I'm going to coach on Saturday.
On Saturday.
Thank you, Lord, for covering for me on that.
It wasn't even, I tried to figure a way out how to spin it. There wasn't one. and also, I was telling him, I would just like you to be like, hey, I know our thing comes first. We've had this planned, but what do you think about me ditching you in Frisco and going to coach? But it wasn't like that. It was like, well, we have a game. We got to coach it. I mean, it was just a certainty, and it hurt my feelings until I found out I had a game, and that's all.
That all went down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I found out I had a game, that's all I wanted to do was coach it. So it was a complete understanding.
So turnabout's fair play.
Yeah.
Turnabout's fair play. Got her good. anyway, we got past all that, but that's been our week, and
we're in it a little bit.
We'll call it good
Okay.
from there.
All
I didn't
right.
gloat, so we're good.
Okay.
So we've got a few games left to coach this weekend, and then move on to a tournament, and may have to coach some next weekend, but we're getting close to the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, today, babe, we've got something exciting.
Very exciting.
We have our third guest.
Yes.
And this one is one that kind of has been on my heart a little bit, but we just talked about kind of out of the blue, actually, on our anniversary. And this person I met probably, I'm going to guess, about 15 years ago. We were shipping corn to go on rail. We had some corn that the quality wasn't good, and it was going on rail to go somewhere. And we had to ship, I think, 80 loads in 2 or 3 days, and we ran day and night, and he was there working, helping us load and moving rail cars and like that, and we've kind of been friends ever since. Mm-hmm. He told me a story, which we'll get into in a little bit, probably 4 years ago, that has stuck with me. I'll just say that, and we'll talk about it a little more. So I want to welcome Cody Aaron today to our podcast, and thank you for coming this morning and taking the time.
You bet.
And we're glad to have you. And
glad to be here.
And I know that you've had a lot of trials and tribulations, just like all of us had. And
Absolutely.
I guess probably the neatest story to start with, and baby, you can tell it about us calling and asking him, and then let him tell how it went.
Well, we kind of take our own time to pray about who we'd like to have on our podcast. We're really protective of our podcast. And so we're very particular on who we have on. And, when we started this project, people said, people that you expect to support you the most kind of will be a little MIA. But there will be some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not their calling to come alongside you. But there will be some people that just kind of come out of nowhere and come alongside you in your ministry and want to further it with you, and it'll mean the world to you. And I think, Cody, you were the first person I thought that's who they were talking about. And so Cody was always so verbal with us, encouraging us in the beginning and sending all of his folks to us. And it just always meant so much to me. And so Jay on our anniversary, asked, what did I think about having Cody on? And it was an immediate, of course, especially if it's something you're going to tell me you felt led, because you don't throw a bunch of names out
Well, and
there.
when you're talking about people, I mean, we've always said on here, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that we wouldn't think would listen to. And I've referenced you individually on here, not by name, but as a person who I wouldn't even really thought would have listened, and was the first person to contact me and say, hey, that was awesome. And that means a lot when you're doing this, for sure.
Well, because Cody isn't one that said, neat podcast. I mean, it was a in-depth, how he felt about it, and just really pouring life into our lives and giving us the bravery in the beginning when we didn't have the courage. And anyway, so we're talking over him right now, but so we call him.
But that's why he's here.
So I'm going to shut up in just a second. We call him, and did you ask him or did I?
I don't remember for sure.
Who asked you, Cody?
Jay.
Jay did. And then tell us what you said, Cody. That was my favorite.
Well, just in coming closer in my walk with the Lord and trying to stay where He's got me. That's where I want to be. I just kind of the doom and gloom of the week. Man, it's just raining. It's raining every day. And Monday, I never left the house. I haven't done that unless I was about to die. Mm-hmm. I have not done that. I'll go do something. But I never left the house. And it just depressing day, and anyway, so Tuesday, I decided I wasn't going to do that. And I went through my normal routine with my prayer and writing them down, my little devotional that I've started recent. But I left, and I got in the pickup, and our driveway's not quite as rough and long and crooked as y'all's, but it's pretty far. I just stopped about halfway down the drive, and I need to say something. If there's a long pause in this deal, I don't know if y'all delete that or what. It's because I got to collect myself. I can't help that. That's just the way it is. I've prayed to not do it. Now I just pray to control it, because it's going to happen. But anyway, I stopped, and I just, for whatever reason, I just didn't feel like I'm where I wanted to be. I just prayed, pretty simple prayer, pretty quick. And I said, Lord, get me there. Let's get back where we were. Let's get back on track. I want to feel that feeling, and that feeling that will come up in our conversation is those chiggers, and that we'll get to that. But I just said, Lord, I hadn't felt those chiggers, and it was pretty simple prayer. I can't say that it was some big long please deal, but and so I went on about my day, just kind of with my eyes open, looking for that chance, and Jay called me, and of course, I get real nervous too. I about shook this whole room with it. My foot's like going crazy. But Jay called me and asked if I would come on the podcast. And I said, well, that's pretty nerve-wracking. I think that's what I said.
Yeah, you did.
He said, well, what's nerve-wracking about it? I said, well, just, whatever I said. I can't recall exactly. But I told him, Jay said, well, if you want to think about it or whatever and, holler back at us later. And I said, no, I don't need to think about it. I said, I'll do it. Simply because what had transpired that morning. I prayed that prayer, and then, maybe 2 hours later,
yep,
Jay called. Of course, it's not with me, it's always something like that. I mean, never even.
I just thought it was was neat that you said, you had prayed for God to give you something, and then we called, and then his words to us it was like a ta-da,
yep,
really
ta-da.
And there it was for the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said, here you go on this podcast and tell it.
So tell us a little bit about your wife and your family, and I like the story that you told us yesterday about your adopted, not adopted brother.
My family is, my parents, they're still alive and well, and they live in Josephine, but I've got an older sister, and then me, the younger sister, and then a younger brother, my adopted brother. Jay had asked about that. He's not legally on paper, adopted, but he came and stayed with us all the time. My parents' house was the hangout after school, and Jimmy, he was always there, just playing, hanging out, and Dad asked him one night, he would stay for 2 or 3 days at a time and then maybe leave for one and he'd be back. Dad asked him, he said, boy, why don't you ever go home? And he didn't comment, just kind of ducked his head down. Dad asked him again, he said, boy, why don't you ever go home? And he kind of started tearing up, He said, well, he said, my dad's mean, something to that effect. And Dad he didn't really know what to say, I guess. He said, well, you can stay as long as you want. And he never left.
No, but
that was in the 7th grade, and now he's 32 or 3, just guessing. And he calls my mom and dad, and calls me his brother, and he's family. So
don't know him from any different than the rest of them.
No, that's right.
That's a good testament to your family, your parents, for sure. It really is.
Mm-hmm, it is. And being raised by someone like that and having that example right in front of you for your home to be an open door for those that need it.
They've raised, I bet they've lost count of how many
really
come through their doors. It's been an open house, literally.
No, that's a good deal.
But,
yeah.
So tell us about your wife and kids.
My wife is Lauren, and she considered being here, but today's their big day at school. They got Valentine's parties and all that, so she couldn't be here. But Lauren, we've been together for over 20 years. I'm not going to use exact numbers, Jess. That way I don't get in trouble. Around about 20 years,
We understand
I
around
won't fact check you.
Yeah, there you go. And then we've got 2 kids. Avery is our daughter, and Cutter, that's her boy.
I love that name, Cutter.
I have a Cutter in my life, grew up with.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's something else, and they're good kids, but anyway.
So you met your wife in high school?
Well, yeah, we did. We're high school sweethearts. I met her. This was one of the last things I told her this morning. Her story was going to be told on the radio. But anyway, she
what'd she say about that?
Oh, she's heard it so many times. But anyway, that was the summer of '97. I could remember that, and for other reasons. But that's the first time I've seen her. And we were at a roping. She had moved in, started living with her dad, and her dad team roped. And he had her at the roping, and me and one of my buddies worked a stripping shoot, just pulling ropes off, and they had pulled up early, and she come loping by. She was riding like a little quarter pony. Of course, we were pretty young then, and she still ain't very tall, so she looked like a little kid on a little pony. That's the part she don't like.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, I'd leave that part of the story, Cody.
Yeah, I guess I could say it was a big stallion or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a little pony. Anyway, she rode him by, and the way I like to tell it, it was like something in the movies. You know, I was in awe for like the whole couple laps there. And I asked my buddy, I said, who is that? And he said, I don't know. He said, I've never seen her. I said, well, I hadn't either, but I said, I'm going to marry that girl. Mm-hmm. And the funny, after that, I looked for her at school, all day at school that day. I think there's 9 classes in the day. All day. Didn't see her in the hall, the cafeteria, nowhere. The very last class of the day was art, of all classes. And she was in my class, in the art class. And so I got my chance to talk to her. And, of course, she didn't speak to me for about 6 months. I mean, she wouldn't have nothing to do with me. But anyway, she finally gave in, and I talked her into it.
Did you say, you look like a little girl on that little pony?
No, I never told that version.
That might have been why she didn't
He'd
talk
save
to
that
you.
for later on in life.
Yeah, that wasn't until later.
What grade was that, Cody?
I was a sophomore. She was a freshman. Yeah.
Very cool. That's so neat.
So Jess asked you when we were talking, if you had been baptized as a young person, and tell us about going to church camp.
Yeah, that was. I chalked that up to being in love at the time with her, because the only reason I went to church was because she would go.
Right.
But yes, I was saved, and she and I were saved together in the same building at church camp in Glorieta, New Mexico. And that was kind of, I really wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't going to go because in the farm,
right.
Jay on the podcast, he likes to say farming wise. So farming wise,
that's so funny. We hadn't heard that yet.
That's his farming wise.
We need a T-shirt that one of my girlfriends said, can you do a whole line of T-shirts of the things that Jay says? So I've been trying to pay attention to them.
Farming wise.
So we need a shirt
I guarantee
that
it's in every single
Is
podcast.
it really?
Yeah.
We have no idea.
Yeah, farming wise. So anyway, that was kind of my
I see it now, but I didn't see it before. But go ahead.
That was kind of my background. Of course, then as a kid, I worked for people. I was working for
Right.
farmers, I think.
Right.
The story you're talking about when we met, but loading the rail cars. But so that was summertime, and there was work to do. So I didn't even consider going. And anyway, some of the farmers really influenced me to go, and of course I wanted to go because she was going, and so we went, and that's where I was saved, right there, me and her side by side, and I said this yesterday, kind of, and I want to say that again. Your word was, what was it? Reiterate. That's a big term.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, I want to.
I'm here for you.
Because I've been asked this specifically in my walk, if I was only saved because she was. No, that wasn't the case. Mm-hmm. I mean, that night it was just me.
I remember you said yesterday it was like you were the only one in the room.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember anybody else being in there. But we were sitting side by side at that time, and I think that's pretty neat.
I just wanted to add, when I came to the Lord, it was an evangelist that came to our church, so people were walking the aisle in dozens instead of, like a normal Sunday where there's maybe 2 or 3 that move. So there was a line in the middle of our church, and I was in the beginning of it. I remember it like it was yesterday. And when I looked back, about 12 people back was my mom. And so we got to be, I don't even know if I've told you that.
No, I've never heard that.
And we got to be baptized together.
That's awesome. That's
really
awesome.
Is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was baptized like the week, that we came back, but I don't remember her being baptized at that time. I feel like she was, but what's funny is that, you never sit and ponder that stuff until somebody asks you.
Somebody's trying to draw it out of you.
Yeah, trying to recollect. But
so
anyway.
You're a sophomore in high school then?
Yeah.
And then so spring forward then to when are you married?
We married in 05.
05.
Yeah.
And so you had been out of school for?
Not very long. I graduated in 2000. So 5 years.
That's neat. So to give a little bit more background about Cody, he lives at Brookston, Texas now.
Roxton.
Roxton, Texas. And he's had cows his whole life and been around farming and has farmed, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I say all that just to start about your story. You told us yesterday that, you and your wife, you even though you'd been baptized, you started, moving away from the Lord, and you were telling us about, I think it was in 2015 that y'all had gone to Mexico for your anniversary.
Yeah, from the time we married, well, really, I guess if you back up from when I was baptized, just like a lot of people, you relish in the Lord there for a little while, and then it just, it's gone. And not because the Lord's not there, it's because you're, doing the ways of the world. But that's kind of where I fell into, and with our marriage was the same way. We always been happily married, but I wasn't doing my part, as far as the way I was leading our household and whatnot. But yeah, we went to, and I think kind of to specify here what we're talking about is, where I was at with the Lord along the way.
Right.
Yeah, and the trip to Mexico was some kind of anniversary, but we don't want to get into that.
We'll just call it a anniversary.
Yeah, a trip to Mexico. But anyway, we looked forward to it, and we went and enjoyed it. And as most people know, in Mexico, and that's where it kind of puts in, as I like to describe it, a common denominator, and that come from a good friend of mine. I didn't realize how often that common denominator occurred until this time, but in Mexico, you're drinking and everything goes in Mexico, and that turned into a pretty disastrous trip in the end due to alcohol and things getting out of hand, and we got into a big fight, and it was just ended terribly. So we flew all the way home from Mexico, never spoke at all. I'm talking about like not a word. We drive all the way home. Of course, mind you, we live, 2.5, 3 hours from the airport, drive all the way home. Well, the kids, they do youth rodeo, and we had a rodeo that night that we got home. So we gather all our stuff, and we head to the rodeo and don't speak. We ain't spoke a word. And drive all the way home. We're on our way home, about halfway from the arena to home. We still haven't spoke. I would like to say that at that point I turned to the Lord for answers, but I didn't. This just happened. And I love to tell this story too. I've told it several times. Driving down the road, it started, I like to describe it as a slideshow. And this went back to way young age, just individuals. It was just like sitting in a drive-in movie. People's faces, maybe just a saying, that person's voice, something they might have told me. And there was so many people, I couldn't begin to name them all. And that went all the way. And then it just, like the movie ended, and we made it home, and I didn't know what to make of it or what. I knew it was God talking to me. There was no doubt about that. But we got home, still hadn't talked. It's late, 1 o'clock in the morning. We lay down, go to bed. And I finally prayed. I asked for something. I said, Lord, I will talk to her. I don't know what to say. I don't know what's going to make it better. And it's pitch dark. Every light in the house is off. And 2 seconds after I prayed that prayer, she got out of the bed and walked around to my side of the bed and just standing there in the dark. I just got chills again talking about that. But that's exactly how it happened. And that was another one of the times that the Lord revealed himself to me and was trying.
Got your attention.
Yeah, he got my attention. And he got it. That, he fixed the problem for me. And she talked to me and everything was good. And one of the big, it's kind of a milestone there that night. Up to that time, and it's kind of embarrassing to tell it, but I had never prayed with her out loud. At all, really, for that matter, in no form or fashion. But that night, that's kind of what the Lord had put on my heart, was to do that and start. And we did. But just like the rest of the times, in a matter of months, I was back on my own. I didn't need him anymore. He fixed that problem, and we went on down the road.
And so I mentioned earlier agriculture and tough times, and farming wise, we'll say. I mean, any of us that have been in the farming culture have experienced tough times, whether it's 1 year or multiple years or whatever. It's just part of the ag life. But you made the comment that, you kind of felt the big dog daddy, and you can kind of pick up from there.
Yeah, like not praying with her. When we married, obviously, I didn't have any guidance. I was doing it on my own then, and it worked. We've got a good marriage today, thanks to me. But the marriage, our kids, I've told this before. When our oldest daughter was born, I felt proud and thankful. But man, we walked in there and had a baby, walked out. 2 days later, I was back to work. Moved right along. Same with our second child, which that was several years apart. I was grateful and felt a little different, but same deal. We walked in there and had a baby and right back to work. And so leading on kind of into that, with the way you're talking, the big dog daddy, I just brought 2 kids into the world just with me, and I don't know how to explain that in great depth, but I sure didn't seek God's guidance,
Well, and you made a comment yesterday, too, that is something that struck home with me, that's not talking about ag, but that you went in going to church. You were still going to church and doing all that, but it was more of that for what you talked about, for maybe the praise for what people said. And I think that's something that probably a lot of people
can relate to it.
Yeah, and we did go to church. Of course, we got to, my wife, most people that
No,
listen,
just say it like you said it yesterday.
Yeah. She's hot. She's hot. So that, and I've never considered myself like cocky or arrogant, none of that. Right. But anyway, yes, back to that, with a smoking hot wife and 2 pretty kids, we go to church and then, oh, you got such a pretty family. And, it just built me up. That just made me that much better. Mm-hmm. And so, and I operated my whole life like that. My business was that way. I just thought I could do everything. And so leading into agriculture, well, another thing that I've like to say, Jay talked about moving to Roxton. That's a big thing for anybody.
Sure.
That's 60 miles. I was born and raised there. I just decided we were going. That area was growing up too much, and I talked to her, and we kind of agreed on a stopping place. That's about as far as we want to go, and so we went. And I never prayed about that or nothing. Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to do, and we did. Mm-hmm. And so going into the ag part of it, that's where Jay's question was. Same way with, we moved, and I had the bull by the horns, I believe is what I said yesterday. I had lots of cattle. That's what I always wanted, And
that's something you had done throughout your life and been around?
Yeah, I'd always done, had a few cows and raised and I'd always kind of piddled, farmed a little bit and baled hay and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I was doing when I moved up there, strictly agriculture.
Right.
100%. We did some welding, built some building and stuff like that. But going in, trying to get on to what you were saying there about I moved up there, took my family, and just had the bull by the horns and had everything going my way. I had a bunch of cattle and farming a little bit. And the farmland, I remember telling my wife specifically, I've turned down so much farmland because I didn't want it. I wanted to run cattle. I wanted pasture. And I said, I'm not going to turn down any more farmland. I'll take it from now on. And so I did. In just a matter of a couple of years, it was 4 times the ground, up. I think I told you yesterday, not like Jay Norman status, but it was a lot for me from what I was used to, working a couple thousand acres and 400 or 500 cows, and had some trucks on the road and building buildings and fence, and we baled 15,000 bales of hay a year, and it was a bunch of stuff going on. And back then, I've heard people say, not toot my own horn, but I was tooting my own horn. I had it going my way. And it rock and rolled like that. It was all good. And I took all that farmland on, and I put a bunch of it in wheat, nearly all of it. I had a couple thousand acres in wheat. And bought a combine, and it was about like it is now. it started raining that winter, and it didn't quit. And come May, my intention was to just hire somebody, a custom harvester, to cut it. Well, it was so wet, and I knew it'd be late and be hard to find somebody. Everybody's going to have trouble getting across their own ground. So I bought that combine, and we drove it home, and we put more hours on it on the highway than we did in the field. And all the wheat sprouted in the head, and it was a disaster. That right there is where everything went pretty far south for me. And the saying I used with Jess was, I bit off more than I could chew. And I've heard that. Now when I hear that saying, that means
you know what the flavor is now.
That's right. That's right. It's hard to chew, too.
Yeah.
But anyway, that started a snowball for me, and that started at that time in my life, what I thought was the worst thing that could ever happen ended up being the best thing for me.
Right.
And I'm gonna keep on going with that story. I don't want to take over your podcast.
No, that's what. Don't worry about that at all.
So, of course, the banks were involved, and I had a lot of employees and that kind of stuff. There was the whole big picture, but just kind of speeding that process up. I still thought that I could pull out of that. I was that confident in myself. The bank stayed with me again, and any farmer knows. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. I robbed Peter to pay Paul, and we finagled, and we did it again. And at the end, that was going into 16, broke and struggling after those crops had failed. And, of course, when you've got cattle and all that other stuff, probably made money, but we were still so far in the hole.
The net wasn't what it needed to be.
It didn't add up. And so there I was with, employees that couldn't pay. And so I had to kind of start telling them, thinning them out a little bit. And so the snowball started. But where I was going with the story, I really still had confidence in myself that I could pull out of that. And so 2016, just to keep it going, all of my stuff was lined up, equipment was lined up in the auction in December of 16. Of course, I went as far as I could, but I could see the writing on the wall. It wasn't going to happen.
Right.
There wasn't no way. And so we sold all the farm equipment and let all the land go. Sold pretty much everything I had, every cow. We owned 500 acres of land, pretty well sold off every acre, and got out of the mess. And I thought that, that would be kind of the end of it. But, in December, that's a bad time of year to be trying to do anything,
right,
especially when you're broke, But
you bet. So you've lined your equipment up, and that whole thing is snowballed. You're kind of at the bottom, but that's when the real snowball started. So tell us a story about your daughter wanting the mules and how all that played out.
Well, my daughter had sold a pig at the county show, and so she had her own money there, and she had wanted for a while a team of mules and a wagon, like the old-fashioned chuck wagon.
I like her.
Yeah, 10-year-old girl,
She's my kind of girl.
Yeah. So she bought her a team of mules and a wagon, and it was everything she wanted, other than we didn't foresee at the time that there was a whole lot of work and more than a 10-year-old girl can handle. So she ended up getting this mule was near death, but a super gentle pet. But she was real old, and then just like a little 2-wheel cart, to pull behind that single mule.
Right.
And she could hook that up. She could do that kind of by herself. And so one particular Sunday, as a family, we were going to go, me and Lauren were going to ride the mule in the little cart. The kids were just going to ride their horses. And so we down there at the barn hooking everything up and getting ready. And the mule was just acting silly. I mean, out of her norm, it wasn't quite like her. So Lauren told me, she said, why don't you take her first, and go check her out before we all head out, because we were going to go down the road. And I sat down in the seat of that cart, and no sooner than my butt hit the seat, she started bucking. Of course, she's hooked up, to the cart, and man, she's going crazy. And kind of a detail I like to not leave out is I was wearing shorts and flip flops, of all times, and I'd like to think that I could just had jumped on her head and wrestled her or something. But anyway, I did, and I I was just shocked that she was acting like that because I didn't expect that. I just kind of leaned over to my left, and, to kind of see if something was wrong, something poking
on her or whatever.
Yeah, something going on somewhere. And she kicked me right square in the face. I mean, it was horrible.
Right below your nose, you said.
Yeah, right below me, right in the mouth. Kicked 4 of my teeth out and broke some bones and swole my eyes shut.
And your wife and your kids are watching this?
Yeah, they're right there. Of course, all chaos commenced then at that point, and the thing I remember the most is I couldn't see. I could hear everything that was going on, but it was pitch dark. I couldn't see, so I'm feeling in front of me trying to find where and I could hear the mule took off running and got hung up between an H-brace on the fence and the horse trailer that was parked there. So she's over there, thrashing around.
Yeah.
And the horses, of course, they're going crazy too, just from reaction. And anyway, I'm sitting here replaying the sound effects in my mind. But
gosh!
Did it knock you out of the cart?
It didn't.
Yeah.
No, well, it did. It knocked me over the back of the seat, but it didn't knock me out. And that's the other thing. Lauren, when I kind of gathered myself, she said, "You're going to fall out. Get to the truck. Get to the truck." Well, I didn't know where the truck. I couldn't see it. So we finally get loaded up, and we're headed to the hospital. And kind of the gory details. I kept like coughing and gagging and spit like I'd swallowed a bunch of rocks or something. Well, it was my teeth and bone is what it was in my mouth. But so the long story there, I won't dwell on that. It was bad, and of course, any head injuries not good. But we got to the emergency room and they kind of cleaned me up, and there wasn't really a whole lot they could do there, and doped me up, sent me home, and we had to go to the dentist, and some of the teeth were gone, but one tooth was still there. And how it happened, I don't know, but I guess she kicked it just right, and it drove that tooth back up in the gums, and the root of that tooth was protruding out the roof of my mouth.
Nope.
What?
Nope.
I don't even, now that I've seen a human tooth.
Didn't even know it's possible.
Yeah. Well, that thing had to go up and hang a left, to do that. But
a painful thought.
Oh,
it was more than painful.
It was horrible. So kind of painting the picture there of a broke man that just sold all his equipment and, thought that was the worst thing could ever happen to him.
Right.
Now he's sitting there with his front teeth kicked out and his eyes full shut and his
literally front teeth kicked out.
The ultimate kick you while you're down story right there.
Yeah, and so there I was, laying in our bed, and my dad and brothers had come over and carried a recliner in there, so I could either lay in the bed or sit in the recliner, and I'd sit there and stare out the window, and it was pure misery at that point.
And I remember you said yesterday you had to wear wool socks.
Yeah, I did. A concrete floor, with them socks, I could just slide my feet and not step. If I took a step, it felt like my brains were coming out the roof of my mouth. It was terrible.
I know you said yesterday too, you're laying there and it's kind of poor, pitiful me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's.
And that'd be very easy to get to at that point.
Yeah. Well, I was there before before the kick in the face, I was already there, but anyway.
So tell us about you got out of bed and then you went to the window.
Yeah, I had lots of time on my hands to sit there. And of course, my equipment was gone, and as a man, to provide, I'm sitting there trying to figure out my next move, I can't, what am I going to do in this condition, broke. So a friend of mine had given me a Bible, and I think it had the date wrote in it.
Yeah.
It was pretty much a decoration for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And I picked it up, and I wish for the life of me that I could remember when I opened it to, but I can't. But I opened it up and read it. I was home by myself there. There was nobody with me. Lauren was working, and man, I got out of that chair or the bed, whatever it was, in my whitey tighties and my wool socks. I just trying to describe to you at the point I was,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I shimmied to the window over there, and I'd kind of thumbed through that Bible a little bit, and I found myself there again, pleading to the Lord for the answer. And that right there that day when I prayed at that window, and that was the very first time in my life that I guess I'd just say that I felt what I felt that day. I knew that I'd gone wrong, and that doing it all by myself, all on my own, I couldn't do it no more. And what I'd like for everybody to hear and make of that, everybody falls on hard times, but it's a shame that I had to lose everything and get kicked in the face to get down to that point to realize that God was there the whole time and was the answer all along,
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was a turning point in my life. It's never been the same from that day right there.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and I remember you said at that point, if you'll have me.
Yeah, I did. That was the prayer I prayed. I said, God, here I am. I ain't got no front teeth.
Sorry, I'm laughing.
Yeah, no, it's literally what I said.
Love it.
Yeah.
The humility of it is so
it was horrible.
attractive.
Yeah.
So my teeth kicked out and my eyes swole shut. They ain't got $1 to my name. I lost it all. I said, but if you can use what's left, I'll do it. I mean, that was a commitment I made, and that's why I'm scared to say no. Like that other prayer, and then you calling.
Right.
I said I'd do it, and so here we are.
All my life, my mom and different ones, I've heard, the Lord works in mysterious ways, and you don't really realize that. And I know you've already referenced it 3 times today sitting here of something Jess will say, and you'll be like, see, there you go. And Jess and I have found within this podcast, like we recorded last week, or maybe it was a week before, and then we go to church and the sermon is over exactly what we recorded on.
Yeah,
and it's not anything we've published or anything.
Not at all. If you would have outlined our episode and outlined his sermon, there are some exact sentences even. But he's our shepherd, and our pastor is who's led us down this path, and we quote him a whole bunch. So it makes absolute sense. I don't know why it still surprises us.
That's just confirmation from God.
It is.
It is, and it is just so funny because, you say in that window, if you'll have me, and I feel like God's like, oh, I'll have you, you know, and you're like, no, wait a second, buddy, I didn't mean all this, but he did mean all this.
At that point, I was done. I was all in and whatever he had to have, and trust me, they haven't been easy, just like
that's
this.
What I mean.
This podcast deal is, man, why couldn't we just do this on the tailgate kind of deal, God?
Yes.
Why we got to put the headphones? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just,
of course we know what you mean.
Well, and I bring up the Lord works in mysterious ways to say that, Jess was talking about the humility you had and how that was attractive. And for my part, of asking you to be on this podcast came from that 4 years ago, talking to you in the Roxton store and you telling me basically this story in a shorter version, and the humbleness of it really hit home to me. And then just being able to tell that story for me personally, I don't know if that's a story that I could tell. That's something, I'm going to keep to myself. I don't know that I'm brave enough to say that, hey, I'm at the bottom here, not necessarily that I'm going to act like I'm on the top, but I don't know that I'm going to say it either. And you just came right out and said it.
Yeah, it is scary to trust people with that humility and just how we do keep so close to the vest.
Yeah.
And I think because we are in such a small town and how we've been a little burnt in the past where our secrets do get turned into something, and so we kind of get a little guarded.
Right.
And I know he calls us to have transparency and to just trust that if your secrets do get misused, that's not anything on you. That's not yours. Let go of it. You're not in control of what anyone else does with what you give away.
Well, and ultimately he does work in mysterious ways for that to come full circle and for, if one person uses it. And that's just like us having this podcast and me hearing you tell that story then and that linking together. It's just, it's crazy, really.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
I'll tell you, talking about that mysterious and the confirmation that comes from God. That day, I don't think I told y'all this. That day, I prayed that prayer. I still had the tooth protruding out the roof of my mouth that had to be pulled. You know, they was going to have to get that out. And I was broke, and I told you this yesterday. My broke and other people's broke. It's two different broke. We didn't. I mean, I was gonna have to write a hot check to. I mean, I wasn't gonna keep the tooth in my head.
You didn't have pliers, or?
Yeah, I did. But so that night, and when I prayed, I didn't ask for money or help with that. I just said, "Take me and use me. I'm here." And so I was laying in bed that evening, and Lauren come in there and she said, "Hey, are you expecting anybody?" And my phone was blowing up, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't talk, you know. I said, "No." She said, "Well, there's a red truck coming down the driveway." I really just kind of chuckled to myself. I said, "I'll get up and I'll get dressed." And I put some shorts on and I made my way out, and it was a dear friend. And I'll struggle through this one, but I knew why he was there before he ever opened his mouth. I knew why he was there. And I couldn't talk, you know, and he knew that. We actually went outside and we were sitting on the back porch, and Lauren's mother was there, and Lauren, and then this guy and his wife. And they just, you know, kind of one at a time and went in, went to the bathroom, whatever. Well, as soon as he kind of seen that chance, he hopped up, started digging in his pocket, and pulled out a big old wad of cash. And he said, "I know what you're going to say." He said, "But just take this." And he said, it's not all from me. It's from other people. And he said, "Just take it and use it." And he left. But I did not pray. He didn't know. I didn't text him. I didn't call him. But the man showed up unexpected with money that I had to have.
Was very needed.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So you talk about trying to guess him and working in mysterious ways. Well, explain that. I mean, that's every time I've ever, had what a lot of people call a come to Jesus. He's provided.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
And so through this struggle, he's gotten your attention several times.
Absolutely.
And this last time, I think, definitely took it to heart, and you've continued to do stuff through church and different things, and just continuing to grow that.
Yeah. We had gotten pretty more involved with church, before that, and we were committed to the church, but I wouldn't say involved. But yeah, now it's through God and God only. It's changed my whole life. It's changed my whole heart, my desires. My day-to-day, everything.
Just changed. Like this podcast is for me. You've done things you never thought you'd do.
Yeah. I mean, 5-6 years ago, I'd have told you 10 reasons why I couldn't. I had been too busy,
Right.
I wouldn't have been here. No question about it. I'd have been too busy.
Right.
So, but anyway, yes, I love it. And I wish what I would like to, for people to hear is that, had I not lost everything and got kicked in the face and, got down to that point, I would never have the life that I've got today.
Right.
Of course, I don't even own a tractor now. I don't own a plow. I don't own a cow.
The life you would have never thought 5 years ago you'd even remotely know.
Yeah. I mean, this is 360 degrees, right the opposite of what I had planned.
Yeah. Well, I remember you honestly told me in that story all that, and you said, I had, the tiger by the tail, and, now I'm working in town. I'm doing something different. Like you just said, you don't have a tractor.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I've committed to my family, I guess, and for what a man knows how to do is work. And that's the thing that just in the last few years has dawned on me. I had a job in 7th grade. I've worked my whole life. But I never worked for the Lord. I never done any of His work. And there was several times, just like I said, I turned it down. There was work to do, and I put my work first. And so now that's kind of how I look at it, is I'm still farming. I'm still in agriculture. I'm still doing it, but a whole different crop.
And a lot more lucrative.
Yeah, definitely.
That's right.
Definitely.
That's right. So, baby, you had a verse that you had in mind to read today on this.
Yeah, we always try to have scripture or a quote or something. And the whole time we were meeting with Cody yesterday, the thing that was on my heart the whole time, and it's a verse I've read on one of our episodes, but it's such a good one, so I'm going to read it again. But it's just Psalm 42, and it says, He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. And I think the reason I was so excited about having Cody on, and I can't wait to hear the rest of what he has to say, but I just think that is something that we can all relate to. We all know what it means to be down in that pit. We all know what it means to be broken and desperate, and He will humble us so quickly to bring us back to Him. And I think it's a beautiful story that He has.
Absolutely.
I agree 100%, and that's why it stood out so much to me is the humbleness. And you pointed something out to me today when you're talking about how you view farming now. It's not really farmer wise. I mean, it's more for the Lord, and I've never thought about that way. I think that's really interesting.
That's pretty.
That really does. So after all is said and done, all that you've been through and being on this podcast, I mean, what's a couple of things you would want people to take from what all we've talked about today?
I would say that God can use you. Mm-hmm. He will. You just have to be willing. And I struggled with that for many years. When the times when God would convict me, and when things would come up, just like saying earlier with the time, if you'd asked me to be on this podcast, I'd have said no. I've done that so many times to so many people, not give them the time because of what I had to do.
Right.
And I have found, just in making myself available to the Lord, that there is a need for just a good old boy. The list just goes on, and I'm going to use one guy for an example. He just called me a couple of days ago. He worked for me, and he's got his own story, but he called me about some family matters, and the reason he did, it was because of the difference that he's seen in me. 5 years ago, he wouldn't have called me. Mm-hmm. Yep. I didn't call him and say, "Hey, man, if you need something, you call me, and I'll talk to you." He just seen the difference, and I was the closest thing that he had. I didn't know that until that day he called me, but I knew I was driving down the road. I knew within the first, and it's not uncommon for him to call me. I want to tell you that too. He drives a truck still, and he drove a truck for me, and he hauls cattle. And he'd be on the road and think of something and call, and we hunt together, and so it's not uncommon for him to call. But I knew within the first 2 seconds of hearing his voice that something was wrong, and I pulled over instantly. I talked to him for 2 hours.
Wow.
But what I'm saying is, I didn't, send him a postcard and say, "Hey, I'm a changed man. Yeah. Call me if you need to talk."
Yeah, I can help you. Yeah.
Right.
He just seen the difference in me, and knew. And so my point there, that's just one example. And what I would want everybody to know is that there's somebody, the Lord will use you for somebody else. Mm-hmm. You're not going to guess at the time why it's happening, why it's taking place, because it's not for you.
Then you may never know.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Well, you'll know if you make it to heaven. You'll know there's going to come a day, and where you're going to answer for everything, good and bad, and that's so you'll know.
Right.
But I don't know. That's the one thing that probably the main thing that I would say is that He can use you. And that there's somebody in your circle, your bubble, your little buddies, whatever you refer to them as, that's needing that right now in this moment. And you might be the one that's,
right,
that God's called to witness to them, or, whatever it may lead to, who knows.
Yeah.
Just like that boy that I used, and he's not the only one.
Sure.
The list goes on, and I constantly, even now that I know, and I'm confident where I stand, I'm work in progress still. Don't get me wrong.
Aren't we all?
But I sometimes just sit and ponder, why me? I mean,
I think, Cody, if you didn't have the awareness that you are a work in progress, you wouldn't attract those people
That's right.
to you.
I agree.
I think that's a big key to it.
It is. And something else you said yesterday that stood out to me that you wanted people to get out of it too was, don't wait till you're down,
That's
till you're
right.
at the bottom to make your move to the Lord.
You don't have to get to that point. He's there right now. Just like for me in my story, and looking back, way back, he was there the whole way. And he was pointing in a direction the whole time, and I just didn't follow. I didn't.
Right.
I knew, and now looking back, it's easy. Hindsight's 20/20.
Right.
I mean, but just the ways of the world, the things that you've always heard your whole life, you find yourself right there.
I think you going to the bottom and realizing what all it entailed allows you to do that, just like we talk about everything that we've been through has, helped us and allowed us to get to this point too.
That's
It's
right.
all definitely part of it.
Yeah, we were saying a couple episodes ago, just when you are in that mud and in that pit, and sometimes you don't even think you're going to get out of there alive. And I know with us, it's like when we made it out, we have since then felt this need to go back and help others.
Yes, absolutely. Now, when I see people kind of in that position where I was, it just kills me. But there's nothing that you can say that's going to. Of course, you've got to say,
Well,
you've got to try.
There
but
wasn't something you could have said to us when we were in there, and so we're
That's right.
aware of it.
Right.
if I hadn't have lost all my, that's what I'm saying. It couldn't have happened any other way, and it's a shame that it took that to open my eyes. I mean, you literally had to knock them shut to get them open,
Right.
kind of
Right.
deal. You know,
See something different when they did open.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's why it's not our job to condemn, or our job to judge, or our job to knock others over the head with the Bible,
Oh, that's
because
right.
none of that is going to work. Only
That's
love
right.
is going to work. And we knew it when we were there. We knew there was nothing that could have been said to us, and we know now that there's nothing that can be said to them. Only love.
That's
Only
right.
love can work.
That's right. Well, and like you still say something, because I'm gonna probably get the last word generally. You may not realize it, but one day, they might be sitting there experiencing that slideshow, to drive in.
Oh, yeah, you're
And,
right.
and that little voice might pop in. I remember Jess said something, or Jay said this, or Cody.
Right.
Their seeds are planted, and that's all you can pray for.
Right.
Is that
Right. Well, I know 2 instances. I met you on the road one day. I don't know, it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago, and I could tell you were really stressed. Then talking to you, I don't know if you even remember that, and that stuck in my head. And then, like I said earlier, talking to you in that store that day, and from that point to the person you are now, I can see that big change, and I think that's all something we all got to work toward to get to that point where people want to talk to us. And I admire you for your humility and your humbleness and your willingness to be on here, and the willingness to do the Lord's work. And we want to thank you, for coming today and
thank you all.
taking the time
Yeah,
and
thank
being
you,
willing to
Cody.
tell your story. It really means a lot. It really does.
It means a whole lot. Even if you didn't want to go to the I'm busy excuse, there's 1,000 other ways to get out of this. There really is.
You've been awesome, and
Yeah,
you've done
me
awesome,
too.
and we really appreciate it.
I've
And,
really enjoyed
yeah.
it. And, we used to always say if one person gets anything out of it, and we stopped kind of saying that because one person is always going to get something out of it
right.
because it's one
Right.
of us.
right.
We always get the most. Jay and I always get the most out of our guests. We're very selfish podcast hosts.
We are. We really
Like
are.
we just want to hear us.
You get
We
to hear
do.
it firsthand.
That's right. No, and so anyway, thank you for coming today. And babe, I want to say to you, thank you for 3 awesome years. And
Oh,
for the work you put in to get us to this point.
Bae, that's so nice. We were talking about our podcast at our anniversary dinner. And I said, I take it for granted. Because for us, it's therapy. It's a huge therapy for us, and it's a huge avenue for growth, and it keeps us on our toes. This is such a huge blessing for our marriage.
It really is. It's a great opportunity the Lord's provided us and directed us, and hope to keep going on it. And
to be sitting up here in our loft with Cody, Aaron, it's just crazy. How neat it is. So we really, really appreciate it, Cody.
Great day to
Thanks for having me.
Well, babe, as the song says, the road goes on forever and the party never ends.
I love you.
I love you too.
We sure appreciate y'all listening today. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can search for us, Moving On Podcast. That's 3 words, on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you. With ways you're figuring out how to drop the ropes in each of your own lives, and even ways that you're not, hell, that's just as entertaining to us. See you in a couple of weeks.